asked if anyone had ever gone, and nobody ever had.
One of the greatest Hollywood mysteries, tragic and mysterious, was the death of the incredible actress Natalie Wood. It's more than 40 years since that night in 1981. But still, some new information comes up, feeding speculations and raising questions over what may have happened that night. That fatal night, on board the yacht Splendor, the very last place Natalie Wood was spotted alive. Natalie Wood was an actress who featured in unforgettable roles such as Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Splendor in the Grass. Her death from drowning off the coast of Catalina Island, California, on November 29, 1981, caused shock waves in the world. This occurred when she was 43 years old. At the time, the case was officially closed through accidental drowning, but a large chunk of inconsistencies about the circumstances of her death have since kept the case alive in the public's imagination. She had been on a yacht with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and their friend, actor Christopher Walken. What makes the case so astounding is that Natalie was known to have an abject fear of water. That she could so readily venture out alone into the night in a dinghy tied to meet such churning waters was beyond any understanding of friends and family. Years of testimonies changing, people from the dinghy doing bizarre things, and forensic details about the case, very few can believe the final verdict was an accident. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case in 2011, 30 years after Natalie's death, citing new information. This move ignited fresh interest in Natalie Wood's case and featured new interviews, especially with the boat's captain, Dennis DeVerne. He told a greatly different story about the night than anyone else. He stated that an argument had arisen between Wagner and Wood in the hours preceding her disappearance, leaving many with a suspicion that she may have been killed in a manner not as accidental as the one it appears at first sight. It has provided further fuel to the fire of inconsistent statements from Wagner throughout the years, mounting more pressure on authorities to re-examine the case. Since then, even more revelations have occurred. In 2018, the Sheriff's Department officially labeled Robert Wagner a person of interest in the death of Natalie Wood, although no charges have ever been filed. And the mystery continues to grow with new developments in this case. In this video, we're going to look at the latest issues that have come up in the case of the new revelations and walk you through the timeline of all that night's events. We will interview some of the major figures Wood, Wagner, Walken, and DeVerne about their roles in the investigation and how things change as we move forward. Has the mystery been solved or further from the truth than ever? Join us as we take a closer look at Natalie Wood's life, career, and untimely death. We unpack conflicting stories, reopening the case, and all the theories over the years from tragic accidents to likely foul play. More details surface. The question remains, will we ever really know what happened to Natalie Wood on that dark, stormy night? Natalie Wood's life and career. The life and career of Natalie Wood are as much a part of Hollywood's golden age as it is of its dark underbelly. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko on July 20th, 1938 in San Francisco, she would grow into one of the most iconic actresses of her time. By the age of 4, Natalie had already begun spending time on film sets, and big brown eyes and her precocious talent cemented a place in America's heart. Her Hollywood start was much more than just a footnote in her story. It fashioned her because she lived in a world few children ever had the privilege of living. At 9 years of age, Natalie emerged, capturing the hearts of many with Miracle on 34th Street, 1947. She moved on from there from being a child star to becoming the most wanted actress of her time. She captured the hearts of her audiences through infallible emotion and outstanding screen presence, a characteristic which no other young actress of that time could match. She delivered perfectly mixed strengths of vulnerabilities and strength, a trait that defined her. As Natalie grew older, her presence began to mature, perhaps looking to move away from being a child star. She was doing fabulous work at 17 in 1955 in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean. She proved that she was more than the fragile child star she had portrayed over the years, and for the first time, received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. The most popular role in her career was that of Judy, a teen with issues. In the 1960s, Natalie kept flourishing as an actress. Her impressive film credits include West Side Story, 1961, in which she played Maria, an icon of films to date. The story of West Side Story is an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. It did extremely well on stage, with Natalie acting as its mainstay. She continued with Splendor in the Grass, 1961, where again she was nominated for a second Best Actress Academy Award nomination for her role as Deanie Loomis. Natalie breathed life and authenticity into these roles that cemented her as the leading lady. So beyond the filmography of her career lies the even greater cultural icon Natalie Wood. While everyone loves Natalie for her extraordinary talent, beautiful face, and classic grace, she stands out today as one of the brightest and most glamorous staples of Hollywood's elite. Her personal life was certainly in the headlines as much as her career. Such notorious relationships, even her marriage to the actor Robert Wagner, made headlines in the tabloids. And yet, she remained a mysterious and elegant woman who carried the burdens of fame with poise. An actress who spanned over 4 decades in navigating the complex intimacy of a child star growing up into a mature actress, which very few in Hollywood have done successfully. And it wasn't just talent or beauty that made her so endearing to audiences. The real charm of Natalie Wood lay in her relatability, both off screen and on, holding audiences in a relationship that touched them profoundly. About her there remained both fragility and strength, a Hollywood dependent who had to compete with the demands of the film world against the claims of her personal life. Tragically, and foreshadowed early in life, her death at 43 was to forever sanctify Emily in Hollywood legend. The riddle of her drowning in 1981 left many of those who experienced the shock still reeling for understandable comprehension over just how it all came about. For most of them, she was not merely a brilliant actress, but someone who had grown up before their very eyes. Questions have thronged for decades about what exactly happened that dreadful night on the yacht Splendor, adding mystery and sadness to her legacy. In this regard, Natalie Wood's life is no longer just a history of the successful actress who has been enough of a tragedy. It is a story about a woman who had to bear up against the pressures of fame since her early years and was able to wade through the storms and tempests of Hollywood when her life was taken after an untimely, mysterious death. Her death still echoes today because she, despite all the fame, remains an enigma, an actress whose blaze of Hollywood lights was snuffed out far too soon. The night of November 28 and 29, 1981. The night of Natalie Wood's death has been brought under a microscope for more than 4 decades. For a better perspective of what could have possibly happened, let's reconstruct the timeline, simply relying on eyewitness accounts, police reports, and the changing testimonies of those who had been aboard the yacht Splendor on that night. On the evening of November 28, 1981, Natalie Wood, her husband Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken set sail from Catalina Island on the Splendor, captained by Dennis DeVerne. The party had been drinking very heavily throughout the night, which, according to later reports, fueled rising tensions on board. At some point, an argument developed between Wagner and Walken. What it was over is not known, But there was a dispute over Natalie's career and her close personal life with Walken that might have cast green eyes toward Wagner. One report claimed raised voices were heard coming from the Splendor, reportedly from Wagner and Walken, which would suggest a confrontation had taken place. Sometime after midnight, Natalie Wood was reported missing. Wagner later claimed that she had gone to bed, and he assumed that she had taken the yacht's dinghy, Valiant, out for a ride, even though Natalie had an abhorrence of water. At around 1:30 a.m., her body was discovered floating off the island's coast, wearing a nightgown, socks, and a jacket. Contradictory reports had already emerged about who last saw her and at what hour she'd left the yacht, even before 48 hours of her going missing were over. Just how all this had culminated into that fatal moment remains somewhat inconclusive, rendering an eerie uncertainty to the scenario. That is, some believe she was accidentally drowned and others speculate she was murdered. Natalie's fear of water, an important clue? One of the puzzling aspects of Natalie Wood's tragic death is the well-documented fear of water that she had, which makes many doubt the official conclusion that her drowning was an accident. This phobia was not a slight anxiety but deep-rooted fear that Natalie had cultivated from childhood. According to both families' recollections and a few reports, Natalie had been traumatized when she was still young. It was said that her mother had a premonition that she would die in dark water. She never forgot this and rarely ventured close to open water, which made her disappearance even more puzzling that fateful night. Testimonies of close friends and family members of Natalie point out that she would not have been left alone in a dinghy, at least on a night and stormy sea otherwise. No question that that would be risky, and she would not leave the relative security of the yacht and jump into a dinghy and then venture out into the Black Ocean. Her phobia raises serious doubts about the original verdict of drowning due to accidental slipping into the water, because that negates the possibility that she just fell into the water. That such crucial information throws the official version of events into the works, as if there is likely more to the situation than what people have been led to believe. Only fuels intrigue. This goes on to fuel speculation that foul play could have been involved and that Natalie was either bullied or coaxed into the situation unintentionally or under pressure. It has been hypothesized that if Natalie was this afraid of water, she was coerced or bullied into the problem that she found herself in, and it makes her fear of water an integral part of this ongoing investigation. The original investigation, accidental drowning. Within the very few hours following Natalie Wood's tragic death on November 29, 1981, investigators hastened to deem it an accident. Handling of the investigation by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department was simple and, surprisingly to many, did not take long. Natalie had last been seen alive on board her husband's yacht, Splendor, where she had been with her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain, Dennis Davern. According to Wagner, Natalie had gone missing sometime during the night, and hours later floated in the water, a mile from the yacht, wearing a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. The autopsy report concluded that it was an accidental drowning. Alcohol and painkillers were found in her system. Probably she was trying to tie up the dinghy, which would be banging against the side of the boat, and she lost her footing and slipped into the water. But bruises on her arms and legs are more likely to be due to the conditions of the water rather than foul play. But in 1981, also, there were many unsolved questions. Why would Natalie, known to have an extreme fear of water, leave the safe confines of the yacht at midnight? Was her drowning accidental, or was something fishy going on beneath the surface? Well, the investigation was concluded in 2 weeks, with all findings stating that it was just a tragic accident. At that time, the public reaction was mixed. Some believed the evidence was strong enough, But many others, including members of Natalie's family, felt that the evidence was insufficient and had questions about the evidence presented. Such an untimely death led to rumors, however, without further investigation, the doubt many had relegated to the background for quite some time. This ruling set the stage for the mystery that would unfold over the decades. A seemingly closed case in 1981 had everyone believing justice was meted out, but it remained to be seen until inconsistencies in details, witnesses, and revelations caused the case to be reopened after 30 years. Dennis Davern's testimony, a game changer. One of the most crucial points in the Natalie Wood case came more than 30 years after her death. The captain of Splendor, Natalie's yacht, on a fateful night in 1981, Dennis Davern dramatically changed his story. At the time of Natalie's death in 1981, Davern told investigators little enough to consider him a cooperative witness. All that could be gleaned was that Natalie's death was a tragic accident and that she had gone overboard by herself. But 30 years on, Davern did change his story, throwing waves of suspicion at the case, bringing attention back into her life once again. In the initial statements to police, like Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken, Davern said nothing about foul play. He told the police he hadn't seen what had happened before Natalie disappeared, and thus she might have taken the dinghy herself and drowned. All these years later, in 2011, with the 30th anniversary of Wood's death looming, Davern publicly changed his story, reviving attention to the case. He said they had a fierce argument between Wagner and Wood that night, which he lied about the previous time as much fiercer than what was told. However, under cross-examination by the defense, and after Davern's retraction and additional testimony, he testified that the fight between Natalie and Wagner did indeed escalate into a physical fight, where the defendant's actions may have contributed to Natalie's death. He testified that Wagner did not call for help immediately when Natalie was missing, and that he had been instructed not to enable the searchlights or contact the Coast Guard to immediately report Natalie missing. These bombshell revelations that came out against Breedner's previous statements motivated the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in 2011 to reopen the case. Davern's new account did much to challenge the official finding of accidental drowning and left little doubt that some nefarious purpose may have led to his death. Davern's transformation from a relatively quiet witness to a person in the revelation made him a focus in the reopened case, placing the Wagner role in a different coloration. The new testimony rekindled public interest and caused law enforcement to examine all evidence and labeled Wagner in 2018 as a person of interest. One of the most significant developments in this ongoing mystery is a change in narrative on the part of Dennis Davern. Robert Wagner, the person of interest. Undoubtedly, the most contentious element of the Natalie Wood case is the record of her husband, actor Robert Wagner. Since Wagner was the closest person to Natalie on the night she died, his involvement in the initial investigation as well as during all subsequent developments has long been under great scrutiny in the media and public discourse. Wagner's account of the events, the emerging inconsistencies, and his complicated relationship to the case as it unfolds are topics of this section. When Natalie Wood disappeared from their yacht, Splendor, Wagner's first account hinted at the tragic accident of her death. He said he had a bitter argument with Natalie and went to bed without seeing her again till much later in the night. So Wagner explained how she probably fell overboard in the effort to latch a dinghy that had been banging against the hull of the boat. But inconsistencies began to question almost immediately from what he had recounted. The more details that developed, Wagner's account of the incident changed in a manner that has many still suspicious about what transpired beyond his words. The case reopened in part 30 years later due to the new testimony from the captain of the Splendor, Dennis Davern. Davern claimed that Wagner and Wood argued with each other that evening. He also claimed that Wagner waited hours before he continued searching for Natalie after she had gone missing. Because of this new testimony, discredit was cast upon Wagner's version of events, and it appeared as if he had a more significant role in what happened to Natalie. Officially designated as a person of interest by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department back in 2018, this has heightened suspicion towards the suspect. But Wagner has been known to deny cooperating with law enforcement further. For years, silence from his involvement in relations with the case sustained much speculation about his possible reasons and involvement. And this elusiveness combined with decades of suspicion makes the part played by Wagner in this regard very interesting. His sympathetic portrayal as a mourning husband on account of the death of his wife, which has been beset by doubts and inconsistencies, leaves him in the middle of one of Hollywood's most profound mysteries. Friend or witness? Christopher Walken? Christopher Walken is an accomplished actor and the third on board the Splendor on the fateful night of Natalie Wood's tragic death. All along, he has represented an interesting and quiet figure in the mystery. It's no wonder his involvement has drawn huge interest primarily because of the proximity to events and that he never said what happened that night. We will discover Walken's relationship with both Wood and Wagner, an account of the evening, as well as the public's ongoing question about whether he knows more than he has let on. Walken has had a professional relationship with Natalie Wood since he was co-star to her in the film Brainstorm, which they were filming at the time. They had become friends during the shoot. Their rapport was so good that Walken was invited by Wood and her husband Robert Wagner to Catalina Island over the Thanksgiving weekend of 1981 on their yacht. And that Thanksgiving weekend is allegedly recounted by all three, along with the captain of the yacht, Dennis Davern, who was on board. Both of them were said to have been drinking heavily. But things turned sour that night when it was said that Wagner and Walken got into an argument. In different accounts, including the yacht captain's testimony later on, described that there was an argument with much heat that occurred between Wagner and Walken over Natalie's future career and her insistence on continuing acting. It was said that Wagner was upset by this argument. He was nowhere to be seen immediately after this argument, and Walken's role in that final move was no longer defined. Generally, Walken has kept mum on what transpired in the fateful night, uttering little more than brief words to the authorities regarding the incident, that he went to bed, was never aware of what happened afterward. But keeping mum on the issue has fueled speculation among many people. Many have wondered whether Walken's silence said that he indeed had key information in the case, or if he was merely trying to keep away from tragedy. Given his stature as one of the biggest stars of Hollywood and one of those closest to the case, public interest only increased regarding what he may have seen. In fact, to this day, involvement by Walken is part of one of the most puzzling aspects of the mystery surrounding Natalie Wood's death: the forensic evidence, autopsy findings analysis. Upon the autopsy performed within hours of her body being found on November 29, 1981, it determined that her death was an accidental drowning. However, upon closer examination of the specifics of the autopsy and later forensic examinations, much complexity arises that has led to new speculations and debate. Initially, when the autopsy report was conducted by the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, they concluded that Natalie Wood had drowned. However, what raised the eyebrows was the numerous bruises found on her body. The medical examiner explained these bruises to be consistent with a fall, saying they were not uncommon for a person who could have struggled in water. This account did much to assuage no one who knew Wood and her absolute antipathy towards water. In 2011, renewed interest in the case led the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to reopen its investigation. Once again, a new team of forensic experts re-examined the autopsy findings and evidence, but with much more advanced mixologies and techniques than those that had existed back in the early 1980s. In this reply, the forensic experts said that bruises on Natalie's arms and body probably indicate a struggle before getting drowned in water. This isn't in line with the accidental drowning ruling given initially, but rather shows a foul play was perhaps followed. While it raised all kinds of questions, why bruises before she went in the water afterward? If they are a result of a struggle, who with? Some theorists mused that the nature of the bruises might indicate an altercation, possibly with her husband Robert Nerber, even Christopher Walken. This possibility that these could be injuries marking a violent encounter adds an extra chill to this tragic story already. Further, the forensic study scrutinized all the details of drowning itself. Water samples from the lungs proved that she must have been still alive when she put herself in the water. So the fall theory has been compromised, and the account of an accidental fall could not go through. This point also validated the course of the investigation. The woman may have drowned while agitated or fighting for her life. This scrutiny of forensic evidence is so fascinating, not only because it challenges the findings from the original 1981 investigation, but also because of the host of alternative theories as to what might have happened that night. The tension between these two stories has kept people interested for decades. It sums up the complicated intertwinement of celebrity culture, tragic events, and the question of the truth, revealing how preliminary investigations can miss important details in a case that may shift the course. The forensic evidence then melts into the emotional weight of the Natalie Wood story and invites one to consider not only what happened but also what human elements played a role in it. That is perhaps, in part, as we have another look at the narrative, we are reminded that even when stakes are this high, shadows of the past can prove difficult to breach. Public reaction and media frenzy. The mysterious death of Natalie Wood has been fascinating to the media and the public since it first unfolded in 1981. The initial coverage of her death was intense, but rather fleeting, as the investigation was quickly closed after being ruled an accidental drowning. Headlines splashed across tabloids and news outlets painted a portrait of tragedy but avoided digging deep into unanswered questions surrounding her untimely death. At that time, the glamorous aspects of Wood's life and career were given top priority, with little emphasis on the suspicious circumstances of her death. However, over time, the case once again remained popular, only to have the intervening years transform it into a cultural phenomenon, epitomizing society's infatuation with celebrity tragedies. This has led to the revisitation of the case by the modern media, fueled by the digital landscape that thrives on sensational news items. It is no wonder then that many books and documentaries, besides high-profile interviews, flooded the markets, giving new insight and an angle to the happenings of that night. For instance, in 2011, the case reopened with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which meant a new round of media attention that reignited public interest in Natalie Wood's death. Documentaries on true crime, such as Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, and episodes from popular true crime series that dissected every aspect of the case and introduced it to a new audience. Celebrity culture obsession is a big reason why the Natalie Wood mystery never seems to go away. The public is thoroughly fascinated by the degrees of melodrama and sad excitement that seem to surround famous people when death somehow cannot speak for itself. That makes words circulate on social media and internet message boards and never allows the case to languish out of public awareness. The case continues to generate much focus in the media, demonstrating a fundamental aspect of the community that opens up interest in the darker side of fame. New evidence and theories keep popping up, all concerning the mystery surrounding Natalie Wood's death, which continues to enthrall people and make sure that her story stays in the public eye. I've been fascinating both old fans and new generations who search for answers to questions that linger long after the tragedy. Alternative theories and unsolved mysteries. While she was showered with enough media attention, investigations, and testimonies from various quarters, the mystery of her death will not just go away with time. This write-up is going to propose some alternative theories and let viewers ponder upon what the implications and possibilities could be attached to the tragic incident. The three most common scenarios are accidental drowning, foul play, and a more sinister conspiracy. According to the official account, Natalie's death was a tragic accident, the result of her drowning following a night of drinking and argument. This theory has been supported by its proponents, who argue that Natalie had an acknowledged fear of water and most probably tried to get off the yacht during a fit of distress, where she slipped beneath the darkness of the waters. The foul play theory, on the other hand, suggests that Natalie's death was not accidental but a violent argument or a criminal plot. This opinion gains strength as a result of the eyewitness accounts, which even Dennis Daverne's statements reveal that there was an argument between Natalie and her husband, Robert Wagner, before she went missing. This aspect thus brings up even more questions about what the connection between them might be and if there would be any evidence suggesting that it could have involved jealousy, anger, or even a history of argument over her death. Conspiracy theories. This is an extension of such speculations but believes that there had to be something more to it than just the tragic sequence of events. Some surmise the evil forces of Hollywood have collaborated to bury its dark secrets, since death by foul play would speak poorly for the dark operatic tone. Most such speculations involve rumors of backroom activities and general complicity on the part of those connected to Wagner and walk in and feed into the broader mythology of celebrity culture, where charismatic public personas mask dark realities. Alcohol is pretty important in these theories as well. Witnesses claim that Natalie was drinking on the night she died. The interaction of alcohol with the emotional state induced some speculation about impaired judgment on her part. Critics have claimed that heavy drinking could have dulled her judgment and led her to the decision to leave the yacht. However, it has been argued that the extent of intoxication was exaggerated just to bring down her character and circumstances regarding her disappearance. Also, the reaction of those on board the yacht during nighttime Wagner, Walken, and Davern censure has been given. Despite these, many questions remain. How did they react in those fateful hours when Natalie was missing? Why did they take such a long time to approach police authorities? Were they hiding something? The chemistry of the three men, as especially after the untimely death of Natalie, adds to the story with depth and secretive features. Natalie Wood's death case still fails to reach a final verdict, even after years of inquiry and public interest. There are so many reasons which add to the current mystery of the case. The fact is that with time passing by, eyewitness accounts become less reliable. Moreover, in this complex relationship scenario, truth becomes a difficult factor to attain. However, in the case of such a famous personality, the emotional and psychological factors are like a challenge in the way to expose the truth. So with each new revelation comes more questions than answers, and frustration grows as people await closure. The legacy of Natalie Wood. Artistically, Natalie Wood had great success in film, marked by iconic roles that defined an era, though behind her artistic brilliance lies the mystery of her premature death, the mystery that has often occupied the epicenter, indicating to me the importance of reconciliation. How would we reconcile her tragic end and illustrious career? We will be including heartfelt interviews from family, friends, and industry peers speaking candidly about the personal and professional legacy Natalie has left behind. We will learn why, in truth, Her warmth, talent, and charisma make this legacy continue to inspire new generations of artists. Through these voices, we will paint a fuller picture of the woman behind the legend through candid recollections and fond memories. But we'll press on in our argument as to whether it is indeed such that has sentenced her to the definition of her tragic demise. Does her death mystery overshadow her work, or does the latter, which is so replete with classics, free her from the accident of her death? The interviews will deal with her cinematic performances as they speak to contemporary audiences and through new lenses that may be used to reformulate her narrative.